Hello, everyone. Happy New Year. I hope you guys had a wonderful New Year's Eve. My evening was pretty chill. I sat on the couch with my husband and one of my best friends, and we watched movies, ate a lot of yummy food. It was super chill, and I needed that. I am popping on here today. I wanted to have a coffee date with you all. Tell you a little bit about who I am. So if you're new, my name is Carla White Crow, aka the Dancing Oracle. And I've had some people asking me questions about my past, my history, my background. I can tell that they're trying to connect the dots. I talk about deconstruction and church life that I used to be a part of. And also they're like, but it looks like you're doing witchcraft. So what happened? Where's the path? How'd you get from point A to point B? And so that's what I'm here to talk about today. For those of you who don't like to watch videos or listen, you can find my story on my website, thedancingoracle.com. If you go to the website and you click on blog, you can see my posts that I've done, and if you look for posts that are tagged my story or deconstruction, if that's what you're interested in, you can read articles that are smaller, bite-sized, my story, condensed a little bit. But if you're like me, I enjoy listening to people talk. I enjoy watching people's stories and videos, and even though this is terrifying for me, I just decided to put myself out there and show up in a new way, and so I'm real nervous, but I'm just here to tell my story, so that's what I'm going to do. So I'm just going to jump into it. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what the last 20 years of my life has looked like. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I became a Christian, because that part is relevant to my deconstruction story. And then I will jump on, hey Shelly, and then after I tell you about that, I'll jump forward and tell you guys about my deconstruction story, and then what I'm doing now, what my life looks like now. So again, if you're just joining me, my name is Carla White Crow, the Dancing Oracle, and I'm going to tell you my story, part 1. Sometime down the road, I'll do another one of these, and I'll talk to you more about my story with dance and movement. But for the moment, it seems like most of you want to know my history with deconstruction and Christianity. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. So jumping in, yes, I spent the last 20 years in church leadership, church ministry. For 20 years, I founded and ran a Christian nonprofit arts organization that was home to 4 dance companies. We served dancers ages 10 through adult. We taught classes and workshops, and inside of that organization, I also personally traveled to different churches and schools, supernatural ministry schools and the like, and taught about worship dance, prophetic dance, Christian dance, dance ministry. That was what I did. I also, for 10 years, ran a Christian dance studio, and for 11 or 12 years, I was on church leadership. My husband was the associate pastor at our church, and I helped with women's ministry, prayer ministry, healing ministry. I sang on the worship team from time to time. And for 7 years that I ran my studio was actually in my church. And I say all this because I want you to understand that my entire world was wrapped up in evangelical Christian culture. It's where all my friends were. I had friends that felt like family. I, felt like I lived at church because I worked there as well. I also was an administrator and the bookkeeper for the church for a period of time. It was just my whole world, and I couldn't conceive of a life outside of that bubble. And in fact, I feel like I viewed the world outside that bubble as less than, almost like I looked at it with pity, like they were living outside of God's will and therefore weren't experiencing the fullness and the abundance of Christ, and me being inside this bubble meant I was experiencing that, and so my life was better in some twisted way. That is where my brain was at in that season of life. So I'm sure you can imagine that because I was so wrapped up in that world, leaving it or being asked to leave that was excruciating. And we'll get into that, but let me back up first. Let me drink some coffee. So my first experience with Christianity, or the first impactful experience I had with evangelical Christianity, I had a neighbor friend who would invite me over to play at her house, and this was like, I don't remember exactly, I was like 12 to 14, somewhere in that age, and every time I would go to her house, her mom would want to tell me about Jesus and evangelize me. The problem was that her angle was fear-based. If you were a Christian in the 90s, I'm sure you've heard of the Left Behind series. Well, maybe you have. I don't know if that crossed all the denominations, but in my world, the Left Behind series by Tim LaHaye was like a big frenzy. There was tons of books and audiobooks and movies it was made into, and merchandise. I also worked in a Christian bookstore during the time that it was frenzy, so like I experienced the full brunt of that. But anyways, Left Behind talks about a specific end times theology called the rapture, and the rapture is an event that happens when all the Christians would literally be raptured or taken up to heaven, like literally leaving their clothes in a pile on the floor. And anyone who wasn't a Christian was left behind to experience, I don't remember the details, it was like 200 or 2,000 years of tribulation or terrible things that were going to happen on earth, and they had to endure that because they didn't accept Jesus into their heart, and so they were left behind to live a miserable life. And so she would tell me about those books and that theology, and I'm a teenage girl, I'm like, yeah, sign me up. I don't want to be left behind. Like, I don't want to experience tribulation. So that was really my first impactful experience with evangelical Christianity. And I wasn't really tuned in as a teenage girl, but somewhere underneath that created a level of fear and anxiety that eventually manifested into chronic digestive disorders that just got worse and worse all the way through my 20s. Around that same time, I had a boyfriend who invited me to his youth group at a local church, and I started attending that youth group, and it was fun. I enjoyed it. I wanted to be near him. But I stayed in this youth group for most of high school and attended like Christian concerts and conferences, and I never really went to the actual church service a whole lot, but I was really invested in what they were teaching in youth group. And, I wanted to learn all about the Bible and, be a good Christian girl. And, let me look at my notes. I don't want to miss anything. Yeah, so that was my high school experience. And just to add in there, another reason I think I stayed in the youth group was because of the whole, well, I didn't want to burn in hell, the way the gospel was presented to me. You're a sinner, you are evil, your heart is deceitful, your body is not good, and the way to transcend that is to accept Jesus into your heart so that you wouldn't burn in hell for all eternity. That's basically how I internalized that theology. And again, that somewhere underneath, I was a teenage girl doing teenage girl things, but somewhere deep inside I was experiencing a level of anxiety because of that, fear-based theology. So fast forward, I went to college. I went out of state, and I was away from the Christian community that I was a part of growing up. And I loved the freedom. I loved being, able to do what I wanted to do, and I lived it up, and I don't regret it. It was so much fun, and I felt so alive. And I kind of just, forgot about my Christian journey. I wouldn't say I turned away from it, but I was just focused on living life and having fun for 2 years. And then my junior year, I did we had to do a choreography project where I was a dance major. So our junior project was choreographing and performing a solo. And when I performed that solo, I had probably the most mystical experience of my life. And literally, it changed the trajectory of the next 20 years of my life. When I was dancing, it just felt like the heavens opened up, or this portal opened up, and I was dancing with spirit, and it was amazing. And I'm like, I don't know what just happened, but I need to know what just happened, and I want to experience it again and find out. So after that, I kind of went back to Christianity because it was the only, structured spiritual experience I'd ever had. And for my senior year, I decided to do my senior research project on the intersection of art and spirituality, specifically Christianity and dance. Thanks to the power of the internet, which was somewhat of a new thing, I was able to find and connect with organizations all over the world. They were already doing it. They were already combining their faith with movement. And so that is how I got introduced to the world of Christian dance, worship dance, dance ministry. And so after that, I did my senior project. I had to put on a production, choreograph, and audition dancers and, do a whole production. And I did it on the Bible, literally from start to finish, creation through revelation, and produced that into a dance work, which carried me into my dance career after college. That's when I founded and ran the nonprofit Christian dance ministry. And, we had a company of 25 dancers, and we did workshops and performances and traveled, and it was amazing. During that same time, that same season, I was a newlywed. My husband and I got married right out of college, and we started attending church really for the first time, 2000. We chose the Vineyard Church because that was the last church that we had attended back when we would visit Ohio or visit home from college. So we started becoming regular church attenders. My husband, volunteered and ran the technology side of things at church, and eventually he went to Vineyard Leadership Institute, which is kind of the Vineyard's, that's how you become a pastor in the Vineyard. And I told him I did not want to be a pastor's wife. I did not want anything to do with that life. And he assured me that that is not why he was doing it. He just wanted to have the knowledge and learn, and okay, that's fine. I'm not doing the pastor's wife thing, though. So 2005, my husband and I started a family. After the birth of our daughter, we moved back home to Ohio, and we reconnected with the pastors that were our youth pastors when we were in high school, and they had a vineyard church, and so obviously we started attending there because we were regular churchgoers now. And right away we were put into leadership. My husband was he was made the associate pastor, and then I already told you I helped out with all the different ministries and worked for the church, and eventually my dance ministry was in the church. It was great for a while. It was really a lot of fun, and it was interesting becoming a mom. I felt like my fears kind of just magnified. As a parent, you're responsible for another human being. And for me, it wasn't just like the physical responsibility of caring for children, but it was the spiritual responsibility of making sure that internalized fear that I didn't want to burn in hell or get left behind. Well, I wanted to make sure, now that I had children, that they didn't burn in hell or get left behind. And that just reawakened this whole new, anxiety, fear spiral within me. And I was, the culture of the church I was part of was very conservative. So I was the mom who, we listened to Christian music, we watched only Christian movies, we had Christian books and CDs, and, we didn't celebrate Halloween. We didn't even do Disney because there was magic in the Disney. And I wore this shirt today just because I'm talking about this. Yeah, it was, I'm not proud of those years, but I was wrapped up in fear and wanting to protect my kids so that the devil wouldn't get a foothold in their lives. That was really the thing that was at the forefront of my mind the whole time. So what happened? Somewhere around 2015, we had a couple friends that in the church, and a family member too, that came out on the LGBTQ plus spectrum, and it really set me and my husband on a journey of trying to understand theologically what this meant. It really rattled our faith to the core, because the church that we were a part of was against LGBT inclusion and believed that it was sin, that it was a choice. And so we were stuck in this place of holding tight to that belief and loving these people who were part of our inner circle. They were some of our best friends and family. And we didn't want to tell them they were going to hell, and we weren't even sure that we believed that anymore because, it just became a huge thing over the course of 2 years. A lot of drama, a lot of trauma. And eventually my husband and I found ourselves to be unwelcome in that community, and eventually it was encouraged of me to find another church. And if you remember, in the beginning of this video, I told you that my entire world was wrapped up in this Christian community. Not just my personal world, my social world, my support, my business, my career. So the thought of not being welcome there and being asked to find somewhere else to go be a Christian, I couldn't even conceive of it. It felt like my world was crashing in around me. I'm not gonna cry. It was devastating. But ultimately, my husband and I chose to love and support those friends of ours that came out. And today we're 100% absolutely affirming. We don't believe it's a choice anymore. But it started a new trajectory of us leaving the church because our acceptance and our choosing to love and support those people was not okay. And so we had to leave and we had to start over. And for me, spirituality is super important to me. It's how I, see the world. It's how I see myself. Like, it's a big value, if not the biggest value for me. And so losing that, after we left the church, I went through a 18-month period of deconstructing, read all the books, listened to all the podcasts, went to a conference, and discovered that there was a whole nother Christian community out there that was more progressive and was LGBT affirming. And so I tried to lean into that and start over in that community. But in the process of reading all those books and listening to all those podcasts, like, everything just crumbled for me. I at the end of it, I didn't believe in hardly anything except spirit. Like, spirit has always been with me, and I've always connected to the same spirit that I still connect with now. And that has been like my guiding light through all of this, through all the difficulties. So where am I now? That is the question, yes. After all of my beliefs kind of fell to the floor and I was left with nothing, there was a couple months that were really, really, really dark. I had to shut down my Christian business. I lost a lot of friends. I felt like I had nothing, and I had no hope for the future. But like I said, spirituality is super important to me. So I started to think about, did I have a spiritual connection before I became a Christian? And if I back up to when I was a little girl, like elementary school, I lived in Florida and we visited the ocean a lot. And that was where I felt safe. That was where probably my first memory of being connected to spirit was being in the ocean. It always felt magical and comforting, and also I loved the night sky. I was obsessed with the stars. I would read encyclopedias after school about the planets and the stars, and I wanted to be an astronaut. I loved the stars so much. And then we would also camp a lot growing up, and being in the forest was really, I felt that same depth in a spiritual connection. And also, when I was like 12 years old, I was actually reading books about witchcraft. I would go to the library and I would rent books about witchcraft and astral travel and psychic abilities, and I was really kind of intrigued by those kind of things. So I was like, well, I'm done with church. I'm not really feeling like I'm a Christian anymore. Why not? Let's explore. So I read a book called Witch Please, and it was just kind of the memoir of a woman who had been through a similar story. She was Catholic. She grew up Catholic, but she found her way back to witchcraft, specifically Wicca, which I'm not Wiccan, but let me try to break it down for you. A friend of mine connected me or mentioned a woman named Lauren, aka the church witch. She lived close to me and taught a yoga class called Mystic Moon Movement, and I started attending that because it sounded wonderful. And that class, for 6 months, I went pretty regularly, and it put me back in my body. And being embodied was a big part of my waking up and reawakening my spirituality. But it was challenging at first because I'll never forget the first time I walked into her class. She had a cauldron in the front of the class, and she had oracle cards and tarot cards and crystals, and there was smoke, incense, And when I first looked at that, everything in me was like, danger, danger, devil, walk away. But I stuck with it, and it turned out to be the thing that helped me heal and helped me recenter and ground and rebuild my spiritual journey. So Lauren and I became close, and I joined her apprentice program, the Wild Priestess Apprenticeship, and I'm a part of her coven as well. And I never thought I would say I'm a witch, but here I am saying it. And the reason I've hesitated to use that word is because what the church taught me about witchcraft is nothing like what I've experienced now that I know hundreds of witches. People like to say that witches are devil worshippers, and they don't even believe in the devil, or in hell or anything like that. They are, to me, a witch is a person who is sovereign in and of themselves. They choose their own path. They flow with the cycles of the moon and nature. They are healers. They're practice embodied ritual, which is all about energy and intention. Communion is ritual, embodied ritual. Dance for me is embodied ritual. So it's definitely not, witchcraft is not what I thought it was as a churchgoer. But it's the thing that brings me life, and it's the thing that makes me feel alive and connected to spirit, connected to the earth. So that is my journey. Witchcraft is a part of my spiritual journey. I would say more I'm probably a mystic, but I'm definitely following my own path, following spirit, and I'm happy here. So yeah, let me know if you have any questions. I would love to do another live at some point and just answer any questions you have about my journey. But for today, I think that's all I'm going to share. My friend Lauren pulled a card for me a couple weeks ago, and I didn't read the description until just this morning, so I wanted to finish with that. This is the card. It's from the Sacred Rebels Oracle deck, and it's called Going Beyond Normal. It says, you are moving outside of the plan. You are living on the border of what is socially accepted. This is good. This is fringe dwelling, freedom. Others might not see this about you straight away. You seem pretty normal, but that secret eccentric streak is just waiting to show itself. It wants you to realize that this is a legitimate, empowered, and creative way to live that honors all of who you are. You can give up forcing or squashing yourself down into a very limited set of so-called desirable qualities like intellect and control. So, if that is you, keep going, be authentic and true to yourself. Well, that's it. I will save this to my IGTV and talk to you guys another time. Bye. I have no idea how to end this. Never done this before. No idea. X.